Hi guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Dipankar, and in this particular video we'll talk about one of the important properties of integration procedure. So I have even highlighted the point over here. Integration procedures can do some things that omniscripts can't. The most important of which is the list processing with loop blocks and list actions. And yes, we are gonna see the loop blocks and list actions. So let's directly jump into our Salesforce Omnistudio org and let's get started. So I have directly come into this integration procedure, right? So let's try to create a new integration procedure this time. So let's name it to sample and loop block exercise, right? And I'm gonna copy this thing over here as type and this as subtype, loop block exercise. The first thing we are gonna do is to click on this save button. So until my previous videos, I have explained you about a lot of things of integration procedure, and we have specifically built this particular integration procedure, right? It also have list actions, but we are again going to see this list actions is combination with loop blocks, right? So basically I have created a new data after that. Also you can go and watch in my previous video if you want to. And we have configured this integration procedure over here, right? So let's try to reuse it, right? So there is an important concept. If you want, I can show that to you as well. Let's say I have configured all these details from this integration procedure. If I had to copy these things, I'll just click on edit JSON, right? I'll control all, I'll copy this. And for this particular integration procedure, we need some data to do our hands-on, right? So basically I also need a data after extract action one. So if you want this, all these properties that I have configured over here, and I don't want to do it again, so I'll just come over here and I'll edit as JSON. I'll copy and paste this. Now you can see the data after I go to edit properties, you can see this data after interface and the input parameters automatically got configured, right? And the next thing, we also need a response action, because if we want to show the response, we need a response action. So in the response action, let's try to show the response that are getting from the data after. So we can do this using the send JSON path. And again, let's try to preview it if we are getting this data or not. So basically we need an account ID, right? Because to this data after we are passing the account ID, right? And let's try to copy the account ID from here as well, right? So basically I'm not explaining the things we have already done before, right? So if you are still interested how these things work, you can go and watch my previous videos, right? I have explained in detail about integration procedure. So basically if you see, we are getting the contact details node over here based on the account ID, right? So let's suppose we want only this contact details node. So what we can do over here, there is something called response JSON path, right? We name it as contact details to be trimmed, right? So now it will show this contact details path and not this account details. And let's say we also rename it, right? So let me try to rename it as contact list. So this is how we can rename it. Again, I have explained this concept in my previous video. You can go and watch my video number 2 on integration procedure, right? And if you are getting this response JSON node over here, we can come and pass this as an additional output, right? And we can even pass this as the send JSON path, but we're gonna use more outputs in future, so that's why I'm doing that, and you will understand in a bit. So basically let me explain again. This is a data after we are passing the account ID, and we are trimming to the node of contact details, and again we are renaming the contact details node to contact list, and again we are using this contact details list as contact list over here by putting the value of contact list, right? So now if I click on preview, you can see we are getting the list of contacts, right? So I think there are a lot of contacts. Let's just try to trim some of them. So what we can do, we can go to this data after, clicking on this icon, let it load. So basically you can see it's just fetch all the contacts of this account. So let's just try to limit it by 3, so that we will able to understand more clearly, right? So if now I want to preview it, right, so you can see we have 3 contacts, right? So that's all about how we set up our integration procedure. Let's try to start our hands-on about loop block. So basically you can scroll over here and see there is a loop block. So let me try to drag it over here. So loop block work like the same concept that we are seeing in programming languages, right? So the first thing here, the loop block takes a loop list, right? So the loop list, let's give it the loop list, right? So you have given the loop list, right? Let's try not to configure anything, right? Just show the output of this loop block as it is. So to show this output, we can come over here, name it, and using the merge field syntax, let's put the value of loop block, right? And just click on execute. So again, you see we got our contact details. Let me collapse it. You can also see we are also getting something called as loop block, but this loop block does not contains this contact list, right? But we are passing this contact list to this loop block, but why it is not containing all those nodes of this contact list? That's because this loop blocks just iterating over the contact, and we are not telling it to do anything, right? Let's suppose we want to show this let's say contact ID, right? We have to configure this as an output, right? So if I want to show this contact ID over here in the loop block, right? So I can come over here in the loop block. You can see there is an additional loop output. So in the additional loop output, if we have to show any additional output, we have to configure it manually. So let's configure this. So basically we are to show the contact ID, right, of this contact list. So what I can do, I'll write contact list colon the contact ID, right? And now that we have got this output over here, I can rename it to any output. Let me try to rename it to person ID, right? And now if I try to execute, we should be ideally getting this person ID node over here, here, and here. Let's click on execute. Let's collapse this, and now you can see we are getting the person ID over here as well. So what we understand is that the loop block takes the list, I just iterates over here, and if we want to show any additional output, we just come over here and just configure our additional outputs and the node name, right? So that's in simple what loop block does, right? But let's say we want to use some actions inside loop block, right? So how can you do that? Let's try with the basic action, that is set value. I'll just come over here and drag a set value to here. Again, this set value will take the same response from this loop block, right? So let's say for each contact list, if you want to get any of this node name, right, you can just write contact list colon the node name, right? So let's try to get a new value. So let's try to do something interesting over here. So basically, if we want to get any value, we first have to traverse the contact list, and let's suppose I want to get the contact name. So I'll have to mention the contact name over here. Now let's make it even more interesting. So let me cut this. We have a function called split. What this split will do, it will split the string into an array. So the first parameter is the string, let's pass it. And how we can split it, we will split wherever there is space, right? And let's not give the third parameter, it's optional. So basically what will happen, wherever we got this contact list colon contact name, we'll split it, right? And since it will give us an array, let's name it to something meaningful. Let's say name array. And again, basically if we have this set value over here, right? It will just execute, but it will not show you the output, right? We know if we want to show the output, we have to configure it over here, right? So let's just try to execute it and see if we are able to see the set value or not. If we are not able to see, then we have to configure it, right? So let's just try to click on execute. So basically it says the set value one status is equal to true, but it didn't show you the name array, right? So let's try to configure it. So basically let's name it the same. And now the name array value that we are getting is from set values, right? So we have to come over here and copy the set values. So basically we have to first write set values, and from these set values the value that we want to get is the name array, right? You can also rename it to something like contact name array, right? Let's click on preview. So let's collapse this one, and if you see, there is something called contact name array over here, right? Basically we are also able to use the set value inside loop block, right? So let's take it a step further. Let's try to understand. Let's say if I want to use some data wrapper, how I can use a data wrapper. So the concept is same. So basically I have to again drag a data wrapper. So let's try to drag a data wrapper extract action, right? And I have a data wrapper configured already. I think it was also provided by Omnistudio. Let's try with the contact. Okay, so there is something called sample get contact details tr extract. So let's open it. So basically this contact details, if you see, it takes the contact ID, right? And based on the contact ID, if I execute it, it will give you all these details, right? So let's try to get these details inside our loop block, right? How can we get it? So basically if this takes an additional parameter, so let's pass this. It takes the contact ID and the data source. The data source, again, the data source should be coming from the contact list, right? Contact list will give a colon, and from where the contact list the data source, we need the contact ID, right? We from contact list colon contact ID should be the contact ID, right? And basically if you come over here, it will give you the response in this format, right? So let's suppose in our integration procedure we don't have the title, right? So let's try to get this title. So if I want to get this title over here, so what we can do, again we have to come to our integration procedure, and yes, of course, if we want to show something as an output for this loop block, we have to configure it, right? So basically let's say we want to get this contact title, and this contact title should be coming from data wrapper extract action 2, right? So I'll again have to write data wrapper extract action 2 colon contact title, and now we can give it to any node name, right? So even I can write just title. So now let's try to see if we are getting this title over here or not. So if I click on execute, right, you can see the title is also present over here. So similarly is the set values and data wrapper, you can also use the other actions as well. The concept is same. It takes a contact list, and based on the contact list, if you want to pass any parameters or anything, you just traverse through that node that you want to pass, right? And again, if you want to show the output of these actions, you can come to this loop block 1, and as an additional output you can configure those actions, right? So basically now we are able to get the contact list over here and the loop block over here, but the thing is that I am already getting these 6 nodes over here, right? I just want to get the title and contact name array. So is there anything so that I don't have to manually write these things again and just merge it, right? So let's try to understand this thing. So to merge these two lists, right, because we know these two lists are basically same thing, but they contains different nodes, right? This loop block contains the details of 3 contacts, and this contains the details of these three contacts, right? Let's try to merge them. So to merge those two lists, there is something called list action. Let's try to drag the list action over here. So we are getting two things. One of the is contact list and the second one is loop block one, right? So let's try to do this. If we come to this list action, there is something called list merge, right? And this merge list order will take the list that you want to merge, right? So let's say I first want to merge the contact list. This is the order, right? And the contact list should be merged with loop block one, right? So let me just try to copy paste these things just to avoid typos. So now we said that okay, you have to merge these two lists. So if I say we have to merge these two lists, then we also have to show this as an output, right? In the response section, let's remove everything, right? I'll just rename it and I'll just show the list action value as an output, right? We just configure this merge list order and not anything else, and we are just trying to show it as an additional output. Let's try to preview it. You can see the name is now list action 1. It has 1 contact, 2 contact, 3 contact, but it again has those loop blocks, right? So basically it didn't merge, it just added those two lists together, right? So if you want to merge it, so we have to give us a key, right? Based on the key that it will decide, okay, so I have to merge this record with the other record, or this object with the other object, right? So basically in the loop block we have something called person ID, and if I expand this contact list, there is something called as contact ID, right? So let's try to merge them. So if we want to merge this, there let's click on this advanced merge and let's map them. So for the contact list, I know we have something called as contact ID, right? And again for the loop block one, we know that we are getting contact ID as person ID. So now next thing is, what is the matching group? So matching group is means, let's say I have given it 2. So if I give it as 2 only, then it will recognize this, okay, I have to match loop block with contact list. But if I give it as 1, this, then again it will not recognize the match, right? So let's try to give both in them as 2. You can give 3, 4, whatever you want, right? And now let's try to preview it. So ideally it should be able to merge those things, right? So we have 6 nodes over here, and we have kind of 7 nodes over here, right? So it should ideally merge those nodes and create 3 separate objects, right, instead of 6 objects. So let's click on execute, and you can see it has merged those fields, right? So I think that's a brief about how the loop block and the list actions work together, right? I think that's it for this video, and please let me know in the comments if you have any questions or queries, and thank you for watching.